Hey everybody, I'm Phil from Lost in the Zone Museum podcast. I've been nominated by my co-host JT at the Movies, I'll leave a link to his profile in the description below, to give my top movies in 10 different categories. I'd like to nominate Martin and Nick from the F and Nerds podcast to do this as well. You don't have to, it's just a bit of fun, just thought it'd be a laugh, and I would love to find out what your favourite movies are in these categories. I think it would be really interesting. Big fan of the F and Nerds podcast. I'll put a link to their YouTube channel in the description below as well. JT's nominated me to pick my favourite movies in 10 different categories. And the categories are horror. Now, this is a bit of a cop-out answer because I'm not a huge horror fan. I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to being scared. So I'm not really that familiar with the sort of classic horror movies as they are. I'm going to nominate 28 Days Later because I just think it's amazing. I think it was a really interesting sort of turning point in the zombie genre. Cillian Murphy, I think, is fantastic. I've seen him in some great movies. It's just a film that I really like. It's a series that I really like. Everything about it's incredible. The cinematography, the music especially is amazing. And, you know, all this stuff about shutting down huge sections of London to be able to film all this stuff. It's just incredible. Next up is animated. My favourite animated movie is The Jungle Book from 1967, the original. I just love it. I just love it. I'm quite a fan of like the original Disney stuff. I loved it all as a kid. And, you know, even though it was years and years before I was born, I just think those sort of original 60s and 70s movies are absolutely incredible. Particularly The Jungle Book. And it's a huge favourite of mine. The music, the characters, everything. It's just a great piece of cinema. Kudos to Disney, which I never thought I'd say. Drama is the next category. My favourite drama movie is Whiplash, which is the story of a young jazz drummer who's at college in his first year, just kind of trying to kickstart his career, and joins a band headed up by what sort of becomes his nemesis and the sort of main antagonist of the story, played by J.K. Simmons, who I believe won an Oscar for it. It's a fantastic bit of cinema. It's just an incredible movie. Really good story. The cinematography is stunning. And again, the music, sensing a theme here. I'm a musician, so it's always going to be about the music for me. Comedy is the next genre. I'm going to go with Hot Shots from 1991. That's a parody of Top Gun starring Charlie Sheen. It's just hilarious. That movie is just so funny, especially as a parody of Top Gun. It's just hilarious. I love it. Watch Top Gun first. If you haven't seen Hot Shots, watch Top Gun the same day, and I'll guarantee it'll just... You'll have a hernia, you'll laugh so much. My favourite action movie is one from 1992, and it's Under Siege, starring Steven Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones and a host of other sort of that guy actors. It's basically Die Hard on a boat. It's a great movie. I'm not a huge fan of Steven Seagal in general. There's a lot of his films I'm a bit sort of at most indifferent about. But Under Siege, and in fact Under Siege 2 was quite good. It's just a movie that I love and I can watch over and over again. And it's probably my favourite Tommy Lee Jones performance ever, which is bizarre, I know, because he's been in so much amazing stuff, but in Under Siege he's just phenomenal. Even if it is sort of, you know, like a B-rated action movie. My favourite Western. Now, I'm going to warn JT at the Movies here, there's going to be a little bit of overlap, because me and him have a very similar sort of taste in movies. So, my favourite Western is Unforgiven. It's just a great movie. It's a really, really good addition to the Western genre. It's where it started, you know, the sort of more neo-Western thing where it's like the spaghetti Westerns, but they take a sort of more realistic stance on what's going on. The black and white thing of good and evil is a little bit more of a grey area, and it spawned a fantastic genre of movies, which I love. Unforgiven is brilliant. So my favourite romantic movie is a bit of an obscure one, starring Robin Williams from 1999. Sam Neill's also in it, and Oliver Platt, if you haven't guessed what it is yet. It's Bicentennial Man, which is the story of a robot who is sort of brought in as like a servant for a family, earns his freedom, and meets this sort of prosthetics expert designer guy played by Oliver Platt, who basically makes him human. During which time he falls in love with the granddaughter of the person who bought him originally, who's now, you know, the granddaughter's now an adult. And it takes place over the course of a sort of 200-year period, hence the name Bicentennial Man. It's just a really good movie. It's quite sad. It's a bit of a heartbreaker, but it's a really good sort of feel-good film. It's classic science fiction. That being said, it's not being nominated in my sci-fi category, but it is an absolutely sort of classic science fiction movie, and a great romantic film as well. My favourite adventure movie, now this is another overlap with JT, it's got to be The Last Crusade. I love The Last Crusade. I know that Raiders of the Lost Ark is seen as like the quintessential Indiana Jones movie, but I just prefer The Last Crusade. I can sit and watch it over and over again. It's one of my favourite movies of all time, and as an adventure film, you don't need anything else. It's so good. So yeah, that one takes very little explaining. My favourite sci-fi movie, apart from Bicentennial Man, and I kind of don't want to go for like the obvious and say Empire Strikes Back, because obviously Star Wars is Star Wars, and I love Star Wars, but kind of don't want to go for the obvious. I'm going to go for 2015's The Martian, by Ridley Scott, starring Matt Damon. I just think that film is incredible. It's one of those ones I can watch over and over. I can watch it on rainy days where I've got nothing else to do with my time. It's just it's an incredible bit of filmmaking. It's a fantastic bit of cinema. I just love that movie so much. And finally, my favourite comic book movie is The Dark Knight from 2008. I think it's the best Batman movie ever made. I kind of think it's the best Batman movie that's ever going to be made, and I'm really sorry for anybody who's really looking forward to the Batman. I'm really looking forward to the Batman. Personally, I think The Dark Knight is the absolute peak of comic book movies. It's certainly my favourite comic book movie of all time. So that's it. That's my top 10 movies in 10 different categories. Don't forget to check out our podcast, Lost in His Own Museum. Thank you for everybody who's listened to it already. Huge thank you to all our fans. Couldn't have done it without you. It's a lot of fun doing this podcast. Me and JT are just having the time of our lives with it. Our next episode is going to be on the Maltese Falcon, so make sure you check that out. Remain indoors, have a pleasant apocalypse, and I'll see you next time.